Dan izinkan saya berbahasa Inggeris untuk kita mengulas lebih lanjut mengenai laporan Moody's itu. Kita bersama tetamu kita, Dr. Shankaran Nambiar, Head of Research and Senior Research Fellow, Malaysian Institute of Economic Research. I want to say thank you, Dr. Nambiar, for joining us. Doctor, from the report mentioned that the decline in China's growth trajectory will spill over to the region through various transmission channels. How do you see this impacting Malaysia's economy specifically, and what sectors are most likely to be affected?
Yes, thank you so much for having me on this show. Yes, I do think that what's happening in China will definitely impact Malaysia, buyer trade, investment. But I think too much is being made of it. China is likely to go a little slow, but I don't think the Chinese authorities are sitting back and not doing too much about it. I think they have been keeping a close eye on what's been happening domestically, and they've come out with a number of measures that are likely to boost the slowdown. So they're looking to arrest what's happening on the property market. They're trying to boost domestic consumption, increase foreign investment, and measures of the sort. So while I think there would be impact, undeniably there would be some impact on Malaysia, I think it might not be as bad as is being made out to be. Specifically, I think the export-oriented manufacturing sector might be impacted, particularly the E&E sector. We export a lot of palm oil and related products to China. I think the impact on that sector is likely to be limited. So my concern would largely be on the E&E sector.
And the report also notes that the share of stable outlooks in APAC has declined, reflecting a weaker economic backdrop. How does this trend compare to Malaysia's economic outlook, and what factors are contributing to any differences?
I think when we're talking about APAC, we have to make a distinction between what is happening, the outlooks for China and ex-China, the non-China part of APAC. Admittedly, I think the outlook would not be very strong for China, but I think for the ex-China, the non-China segment, I think it's likely to be stable, perhaps a little low, but I think it would be stable. Having said that, I think, yes, overall we have globally a slightly weaker backdrop, but I think we shouldn't discount the fact that Malaysia is resilient. It has demonstrated its resilience, and I think going forward, Malaysia will be strongly driven by its domestic growth. Some of the figures have been looking good, and I expect would continue to look good. Inflation has moderated. Unemployment figures are looking good, and I expect that over this year, the fiscal space will be broadening. On top of that, I think we have rather solid infrastructure development incentives that have been announced under the 2024 budget. So all of this put together, I think we'll have strong domestic-driven growth, which would mitigate any negative factors.
I'm also going to touch on the business aspect, where the report highlights the impact of geopolitical risks on business decisions in the region. How do you see Malaysia navigating this risk, and what implication do they have for the country's economic growth?
Specifically, I think when you're talking of geopolitical risks, you would have the larger global factors that probably would affect Malaysia, principally what's happening in the Middle East. But since we've been talking quite a bit about China, I think that's another issue that that probably might continue to come to the front. And here I'm referring to the tensions between the U.S. and China. It could see itself being played out via whatever restraints that you might find coming out of the U.S. But I think I wouldn't be too worried about it so long as Malaysia maintains its neutrality, and I think we've done this excellently over the years. We actually might stand to benefit. I think those manufacturers in China might see advantage in locating to Malaysia, and I think those other foreign investors who previously looked to China as a location for investment would also want to look at Malaysia. So I think we're likely to perhaps benefit from these geopolitical risks, or more specifically, whatever tensions you might see between the U.S. and China.
And as mentioned in the reports, interest rates are peaking globally and that policy rates are likely to remain above levels seen in the last decade or most of the region. How will this impact Malaysia's borrowing costs and economic growth, and what measures can be taken to mitigate any negative effects?
I think, yes, the interest rates have been peaking, but I would expect them to sort of, they have been elevated so far, but I expect that in the months coming forward, you might see some moderation. Perhaps later in the year, you might also see some rate cuts coming out from the U.S. So I think that the borrowing costs in Malaysia might probably be going down as we head towards the later part of the year.
Apart from all the aspects that has been touched in the report, what aspect do we have to look at, Dr. Nambiar?
I think what we have to do is to continue to focus on what we can do to attract investment, what we can do to facilitate FDI in this country. And I think we have selected two areas to drive growth visually, digitization related areas, and also alternative sources, non-fossil fuel sources of energy. And I think both these areas could help generate growth, employment. I think, for instance, the solar power plant farm that's being talked of for Johor, that's, I think, an example, a wonderful example of what we can do going forward in order to generate growth.
Dr. Nambiar, last one. With this report, what can we expect for the growth of the first quarter of 2024?
I think that looking for the whole year at least, I've been looking at the numbers, and I think that for the whole year, I would expect at least something in the region of 4.3. It probably could improve, and expect the economy would improve as we move into the third and fourth quarters. So I'm fairly optimistic about growth going in 2024. It's probably likely to exceed what we saw in 2023. So I think I am fairly optimistic of my forecast for this year.